A DUP deal and a likely return to this place. Welcome to BBC Newsline.
I am pleased to report that the party executive has now endorsed the proposals that I have put to them.
Sinn Féin's Vice President, Michelle O'Neill, is in a position to become the first nationalist First Minister.
Live point where we actually go into that chamber and nominate First and Deputy First Minister, put ministers into positions, and let's get down to business. The public deserve no less.
Here in the Newsline studio, we'll be getting reaction and analysis to today's events.
Of all the things that are embarrassing standing here this morning, I think the length of time it's taken is probably the least embarrassing.
The last 2 years have been a profound failure for the people of Northern Ireland.
You leave it too long, people will start to try and pick at the deal, and there's lots to pick at.
That is a climb down by any means, and a climb down of significant and adverse constitutional consequences.
There were protests outside last night's DUP meeting, but there was also a mole inside who leaked details to a loyalist activist.
Senior people in the DUP felt so exercised about this and felt that this was such a defining moment that they took the step that they did.
With a return to Stormont now likely, I've been getting reaction, including here in Larne.
About 10?
It should have been packed long ago.
We need to read the fine print.
Hello, welcome to Tuesday's programme. I'm Catherine Morrison in the studio tonight, and we'll have Declan Harvey at Stormont. The DUP has agreed a deal that will see them return to Stormont and power sharing with Sinn Féin. That was decided during a dramatic 5-hour-long meeting last night. It was supposed to be a private gathering, but someone in the room, someone senior, we're told, was wearing a wire and leaked what was being said. Nevertheless, party members were persuaded by Sir Geoffrey Donaldson to get behind the changes he's negotiated to post-Brexit trading rules and re-enter the executive. So let's go to Stormont. Declan is there for us. And Declan, possibly the most optimistic day at Parliament buildings there for quite some time.
Yeah, although it's all relative, isn't it? By our count, it's about 727 days since the DUP's Paul Givan handed in his resignation and the institutions here collapsed. There were no champagne corks popped here today. In fact, most of the politicians we've been speaking to moving around the Great Hall still have more questions than answers, but that is not to say that there hasn't been movement. It's only a week ago that in the chamber just down the hallway there, some MLAs were saying that they may never see the Assembly sit again. But what a difference a week seems to have made. I'm joined here in the Great Hall by our political editor, Enda McClafferty. Give us some perspective on what all this means.
Well, Declan, it does feel this evening as if Stormont has its mojo back after 2 years of stagnation whenever this building was effectively empty, a politician-free zone, essentially, and that came at a heavy cost both economically and politically for Northern Ireland. Now the sense is we are being fast-tracked back into government. With all likelihood, we're going to see MLAs back in that Assembly chamber come Saturday. Now, of course, that is going to make a big difference to the people looking in because they have been waiting with the many challenges out across Northern Ireland for them essentially to be dealt with. We know, of course, though, it's coming at a price for the DUP, and I think the party is very much in damage limitation mode because there was a bruising meeting last night. There was a lot of challenges to the party leader, and I know they will have to go to some effort to try and ensure that those voices within the party who are uneasy, unhappy about the direction the party is now taking, stay silent in a sense and do not enter the political debate about where Stormont is going next. And you could really feel today also, Declan, the wheels of government here being oiled essentially by the politicians in preparation for what's going to come next week, because they know that perhaps the easy part in the long run might be getting Stormont up and running again when you consider the massive challenge facing our politicians to get our finances right and also to get our public services right.
Yeah, we can consider the in trays of ministers in due course. They will be significant. Enda, we're going to talk to you again shortly. Standing by to speak to us, the DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson and the President of Sinn Féin, Mary McDonald, is here. But after what has been an extraordinary 24 hours by any reckoning, our political correspondent Jane McCormack now brings you right up to date.
After months of will they, won't they, the answer, it seemed, lay in the smile on the DUP leader's face.
I am pleased to report that the party executive has now endorsed the proposals that I have put to them.
Deal done after burning the midnight oil. Hardly unusual in our politics. But out of the ordinary was the blow-by-blow account of the DUP executive meeting, live tweeted by loyalist activist Jamie Bryson, with help from one DUP member and yet another twist, wearing a wire.
Senior people in the DUP felt so exercised about this and felt that this was such a defining moment that they took the step that they did.
So these were senior people that helped you mean?
Well, I wasn't into them, Joel, so...
I think people you know who helped you.
Yes.
While those unnamed DUP members remain in the shadows, some at Stormont are open about what lies ahead.
I think the next number of days are going to be crucial to get us to the actual real live point where we actually go into that chamber and nominate First and Deputy First Minister, put ministers into positions, and let's get down to business. The public deserve no less.
I mean, of all the things that are embarrassing standing here this morning, I think the length of time it's taken is probably the least embarrassing of the spectacle we've seen unfold in recent days.
We don't think, the SDLP doesn't think this is a time for champagne corks to pop or for balloons to be released in celebration. The last 2 years have been a profound failure for the people of Northern Ireland.
Now we're all asking what next after 727 days without devolution and moments when it felt like time could be called on Stormont forever. It now seems events are moving rather quickly. Whether that's too quickly or not fast enough depends on which of the other unionist parties you speak to.
If we leave it too long, people will start to try and pick at the deal. And there's lots to pick at. Personally, as a leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, we believe we could have got to where we are now without collapsing Stormont.
He is accepting the protocol. He is accepting that GB, under the protocol, is to be treated in trade terms as a foreign country and that all these EU laws are continued to apply. That is a climb down by any means, and a climb down of significant and adverse constitutional consequences.
Not so, according to the DUP leader now embarking on a hard sell of his deal.
Some people said you're going to take the green lane and paint it red, white and blue and put a flag on it. Well, if someone wants to put a flag on it, whatever. But as far as we are concerned, the green lane will go and be replaced by the UK internal market system. I believe what we have secured represents real change and everybody will be able to see it for themselves.
And see it ourselves we will tomorrow. Both governments believe it's been worth the wait.
We have been able to achieve quite a vast array of decent improvements to make sure our internal market works properly as it should do, and you'll hopefully be able to see those tomorrow.
It now looks as if we have a pathway to re-establish both a functioning executive and an assembly, and I think that we need to build on that positive momentum now.
Following countless false dawns in this process, the sun has risen once more on power sharing. But the hard work is only just beginning. Jane McCormack, BBC Newsline, Stormont.
Well, details of this deal are going to be spelled out in black and white tomorrow. So for now, we are going on what Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has told us. He has described it as a good outcome for Northern Ireland. He has said for goods travelling between GB and here that there will be no checks, zero checks and zero customs paperwork were his words. He has said any new EU laws will not automatically be applied to Northern Ireland. And he said, I will be honest with people about what we've been able to deliver, adding that they didn't get everything that they wanted. Well, we're joined now by Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. Thank you very much. You've had a long 24 hours. We appreciate you being here. You've said that you want to be honest about what the DUP has achieved. Could I ask you to be honest about what you haven't achieved? What did you ask for that you didn't manage to get in this deal?
Well, I think we got most of the things that we wanted to achieve, and indeed when you assess the progress we've made against our 7 tests, I think that we are satisfied that the elements that we have now delivered on goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland and restoring Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom and its internal market, protecting our place in the Union, protecting our economic rights under the Acts of Union, these are all things that really matter to unionists, but fundamentally are important to Northern Ireland's place within
you've been very clear
the United
today.
Kingdom.
You've been very clear today. You wanted to be honest with people that you didn't get everything you wanted. What wasn't delivered to you? What have you had to compromise on?
Well, one of the elements that was in the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, for example, introduced the concept of dual regulation in terms of the manufacture of goods in Northern Ireland. Now, businesses at that time were not happy with that concept. They preferred the simplicity of the current arrangements, but we would like to test that going forward. Another area where there is more work to do is moving goods out of the red lane, which is the only lane that will now exist at our ports, which deals with goods moving into the EU. If there are goods, and some businesses in Northern Ireland are moving their goods through the red lane, they don't need to, and we want to move those goods out of the red lane into the UK internal market system.
So is the Irish Sea border gone?
In terms of the movement of goods within the United Kingdom, absolutely yes.
Is it the same as it was pre-Brexit?
Goods will flow freely from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. There will no longer be a requirement for customs declarations. There will no longer be a requirement for physical checks, for identity checks, except in circumstances where, as with the rest of the United Kingdom, there's a suspicion that someone's smuggling goods into Northern Ireland. So I think that the progress we have made does restore Northern Ireland's place within the UK and its internal market.
But just so I'm clear, are you saying that things are as they were pre-Brexit in your view now?
Well, Brexit has occurred. We've left the European Union.
Well, indeed.
You can't possibly argue that having left the European Union, things are the same as they were then. Of course not. What we do have is we've restored Northern Ireland's place within the UK and its internal market. That's what we were seeking to achieve. We've removed the border on goods moving within the UK and remaining in the UK. We've guaranteed unfettered access for Northern Ireland businesses into the market in Great Britain. The protocol harmed all of that, and we have removed those restrictions to trade, and we have restored the economic rights of the people of Northern Ireland that prevailed under Article 6 of the Acts of Union.
You acknowledged this morning in interviews that we have a privileged access to the EU. That was the words you used. But you've also said that no new EU laws will automatically apply in Northern Ireland. So how will we continue to keep our privileged access should the EU begin to change their laws?
Well, the question is, will any new EU law harm our ability to trade with the rest of the United Kingdom? That's our priority. Great Britain is our biggest market, so we need to protect that market and our access, our unfettered access to the market in Great Britain. So if there is a new EU law that would harm that, then this institution will be able to say to the UK government that law cannot apply because it will affect our ability to trade with the rest of the UK.
And would
it will
Westminster
then be a
have to listen
matter
to you?
for negotiation with the EU to ensure that we continue to have our access to the EU single market, of course. But I don't anticipate that the EU are going to withdraw that access in those circumstances.
So you envisage the UK and the EU continuing in lockstep forevermore?
Well, I think that as we seek to develop good relations, we've left the European Union. Northern Ireland is no longer part of the European Union, but we want to have good relations with our neighbours. That's always been our objective. But what we're not prepared to accept is barriers to trade within the United Kingdom. And that's why we have fought hard and delivered an end to those checks on goods coming into Northern Ireland from Great Britain. We have restored our place within the UK's internal market, and that is fundamentally important for our economy.
Somebody wore a wire into your private meeting last night. Are you trying to find out who that is? And if you're successful, will they remain in the DUP?
Well, if we were to discover who did that last night, that would be a fundamental breach of our party rules.
So if you find out,
we would absolutely deal with that in line with our internal disciplinary procedures.
How could you keep them in the party?
Well, look, they would have to go through the disciplinary process. I don't want to preempt the outcome of that, but I will say this to you very clearly. We had a good meeting last night. We had a forthright discussion. We had more than 30 people who spoke in that meeting, set out their views very clearly, and at the end we came to a decision. And I believe the party has now acted decisively through its party executive to move forward on the condition that the UK government delivers on its commitments, and that's what we want to see happening.
Yes, that's the next
this week
stage.
we want to see legislation coming forward in the House of Commons that protects our place in the United Kingdom, that protects our ability to trade with the rest of the United Kingdom. And if we get these things, then we will take the steps to restore our political institutions.
Are you going to lead your MLAs into that chamber?
Well, I am the leader of the party. My place at the moment is at Westminster to ensure this deal is properly delivered.
But once you have that tied up, are you going to come here?
Once we complete that work, we will be at a general election. Decisions will then be taken as to what we do at that stage.
Who would be the Deputy First Minister if not you?
I haven't made any decision on that yet because we're not ready to restore the institutions. We want to be sure that the government takes the steps that they have promised to take. We will know in days if that's happening, then we will move forward as the executive mandated us to do last night.
You've had a very long 24 hours and we appreciate you being here, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the leader of the DUP. We also want to say, because so much has been happening in the last 24 hours or so, that on the BBC News NI website there's a timeline of how events have unfolded. You can also download the BBC News app and it's all there for you. But as Sir Geoffrey moves away, Enda McLafferty, our political editor, is here. You were listening to that. What are you making of it?
Well, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson is in a good place today because we are talking about a deal that we haven't seen. He is the only one in this hall that has seen that particular deal. So he's in a strong position to be able to get out first, in a sense, and focus on the parts that he wants to focus on without being scrutinised in detail about exactly what's not in this deal that he thought should have been in this deal. So that puts him in a strong place in terms of getting out front and centre to try and keep the focus where he essentially wants it. But he knows, of course, tomorrow is going to be the big test for him because that's when this deal will drop. That's whenever we will be able to go through it line by line and be able to assess what's in black and white compared to what he's told us today. And I think that'll probably be the big challenge for him tomorrow.
And what do you see as his major challenges apart from that to get this deal over the line, but both as a party leader but also in this place to try and run a government?
Well, I think we've got a clear illustration of some of the challenges he will face as a party leader from his meeting last night. The fact that somebody, as you said, wore a wire into that meeting in a sense to try and undermine his leadership shows how unhappy some of his troops are essentially, and he's going to have to go forward while looking over his shoulder at some of those people who might try and make life difficult for him as he tries now to sort of rebuild trust in his party and also to take devolution forward. One thing I would say though, the numbers are in his favour. For those people that oppose him now in the party have to face the reality that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has a majority of officers behind him, and he also has now what he calls a decisive endorsement from his party executive, and that's a pretty strong position to be in.
OK, and thank you very much. We'll hear from you again at the end of the programme. Standing by, Mary Lou MacDonald from Sinn Féin. We will speak to her in just a moment. Right now, though, we will pass back to you, Catherine, in the studio.
Yes, Declan, thank you. So no doubt a significant day, but let's just remind ourselves how we got here. For that, we're going to go back to February the 3rd, 2022, when the DUP First Minister Paul Givan resigned in protest at post-Brexit trading arrangements collapsing the executive. Then loyalists opposed to the protocol hold a series of protests, some attended by senior DUP figures, including Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. Then, April 2023, the Northern Ireland Protocol becomes the Windsor Framework. It reduced the number of post-Brexit checks on goods, but it wasn't enough. And Stormont's continued absence means no pay rises for public sector workers. Thousands took to the picket lines, piling on the pressure, which brings us to today, or rather last night, when DUP members endorsed a deal to restore power sharing if legislation is passed at Parliament first, as we've just been hearing. So it has been a couple of eventful years, but what do people make of all this, of Stormont's return? Our community correspondent Mark Simpson has been gauging reaction in Londonderry and Larne.
On the main road into Larne, there's a message. But what's the view on the main street of the town about the DUP going back in and Stormont returning?
About time.
It should have been back long ago.
It's about time they did come back. That's ridiculous. Very glad. Really pleased. We need it.
Everybody needs it, don't they? In the day, like, so get this company moving again.
You've only to look around these small towns and all the shut shops. I'm just hoping things will change now.
Well, they might get the executive back, but sure, what difference is that going to make? Sure, they're a waste of money to start with.
Like, if you don't have an executive, then what do you do? Like, how do things get done? So it's good to have a deal back.
If he sold us out, I don't think he would anyway. I don't think he's a person that would do that, you know, to be honest.
You're cautious, though?
Oh, I'm cautious, yeah.
We need to read the fine print.
In terms of what?
Well, we don't know what's on the deal yet, do we? I haven't a clue. We're only going with what Jeffrey's saying. He says the border's gone. Wait and see. Wait and see. Thank you very much.
For some people in Larne and also in Derry, today's news was unexpected.
I am surprised. I am.
I thought they might have held out for another few weeks.
I think that's what's wrong with Jeffrey Johnson. He doesn't want to be second best.
Oh no, he would say that's not the case.
Back in Larne, another question. If and when Stormont does get back up and running, there's going to be a Sinn Féin First Minister. How do you feel about that?
I feel fine about that. I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be. They've been voted in, so yeah.
There have been many different reactions to today's news, but it's clear that many people still have lots of questions about what exactly is going to happen next. Mark Simpson, BBC Newsline in Larne.
Well, I'm joined in the Great Hall now by Mary Lee McDonald, the President of Sinn Féin. Thank you for speaking to us. Is this a good deal?
Well, look, it's good news that we're going to get the executive and get government back. That's the best deal. It's the only, plausible deal for people right across the north. We've been in a state of limbo for far too long, and I am greatly heartened that the DUP have now taken a decision and are now in a position to get back around the executive table with colleagues and roll up the sleeves and get cracking, get working for everyone.
But you have been briefed on the contents of much of what's in this.
Well, in the course of this, and bear in mind this was very much a bilateral negotiation between the DUP and the British government.
Is it a good
but
deal?
we've kept abreast, and our bottom line was that nothing would involve an undermining of the Good Friday Agreement. We're absolutely satisfied that that's the case. Bearing in mind, by the way, Brexit was always bad news for Ireland. It was always going to be disruptive. It was always going to require bespoke arrangements. The DUP had issues, had clarifications, modifications. That matter is now concluded.
Do they deserve praise for holding the line and achieving what they say they've achieved?
Well, even if they did, I don't think it is my praise that they would require.
You're about to enter a coalition government here with them. Why would you not praise them?
And I'm very, very pleased that is the case. Can I just acknowledge the decision has now been made after a very long time.
But why wouldn't you say fair play to you? He's held the line and you got a bit of what you wanted.
That is, there's many interpretations of that. I don't want to rehash or praise or not praise anybody. I simply want to say what's gone is gone, what's done is done, and now we need to look to the future, because I mean, we have a financial package on the table. It sounds impressive as a top-line figure of 3.3 billion, but nobody should be in any doubt this place is not properly funded, and we are going to have an ongoing battle with the Tory government to get the proper resources for quality public services and to give everybody the kind of standards that they are absolutely entitled to. And that has to be a collective effort.
I have two very quick questions for you. Are you in favour of reforming this place so that it cannot be pulled down in the way? We have seen it pulled down by more than one party.
Well, look, the agreement is now coming on 26 years old. I think the conversation around reform has to happen. I think it needs to be considered and it needs to be calm. We are up for that. What we want to protect absolutely are the foundation stones of equality and inclusion that are at the heart of power sharing.
And I know you're under time pressure as well, but the symbolism of the first nationalist First Minister, just in a sentence or two?
Is immense. And I think if you wanted an emblem or a motif or evidence of how profoundly things have changed in this part of the world, then Michelle O'Neill as First Minister for all, a first Sinn Féin First Minister, demonstrates that in spades, and it's change that's welcome, and I believe that will prove to be so positive for society as a whole. So it's a great day in that respect.
Okay, Mary Lee McDonald, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Catherine.
much.
Declan, thank you. Now, as we've been hearing, the government will publish the deal tomorrow. Let's take a closer look at what Sir Geoffrey Donaldson's been saying with our business and economics editor, John Campbell. Foremost amongst that is this idea that there will be zero checks on goods on customs paperwork coming between GB and NI. How can that be?
I think his words were carefully chosen because he was talking about zero customs paperwork or zero customs declarations. That is different from zero paperwork. We are still going to be in a situation where businesses in GB will need to complete certain paperwork to send their goods into Northern Ireland. No doubt about that. In terms of checks, there are some checks known as identity checks carried out on goods coming through the Green Lane, specifically food products. 10% of consignments currently get those checks. That's due to be reduced to 5% by the end of next year. So, well, something to look out for tomorrow. Has there been an agreement that that can go down to 0%? That's going to be pretty cut and dried.
And there was another development today, news of a side deal between the EU and the UK. What can you tell us about that?
That is basically to make sure that Northern Ireland is treated the same as the rest of the UK when it comes to the use of UK free trade deals, making sure that we can bring in stuff from like New Zealand lamb on the same basis as the rest of the UK. Trade experts say that this is pretty minor, pretty narrow stuff, not a big economic impact. However, I think it has big political symbolism because it shows that changes can be made to the legal text of the withdrawal agreement, and it also allows the DUP to say, listen, here is something where there is a change which is not leading to divergence from the rest of the UK, but is bringing us back closer to the rest of the UK. That is the significance of this side deal between the UK and the EU today.
OK, John, thank you. More from you tomorrow when the deal is published. But first, let's get the weather forecast with Cecilia. Cecilia, what it's looking like?
We've got all change in the next 24 hours, Catherine. So a lovely day today, but of course, here's a satellite picture. The clear skies today, but this is what's coming our way tomorrow. That massive cloud will bring wet and very windy weather, and we have a warning in the forecast. It will stay dry tonight, though, not as cold as last night. More cloud moving in, the breeze picking up as well. So you shouldn't have to scrape your car windscreen tomorrow. It could get chilly for a time, mind you, in parts of County Down.